Welcome to the Part Ace channel. Today, we explain Deuteronomy chapter 31 in a clear and simple way, step by step. We're looking at a genuinely fascinating text today because it serves as the final dramatic act of Moses' leadership. I mean, we are literally witnessing the day he officially steps down. Now, to give you just a little bit of brief context on exactly where we are in the story right now, the Israelites are camped on the plains of Moab. They are sitting right across the Jordan River from Jericho. So they are on the very edge of the Promised Land after 40 long years of wandering in the desert. Up until now, Moses has been delivering this massive farewell speech, which actually makes up the bulk of the entire book of Deuteronomy. But here, as we hit chapter 31, the speech is wrapping up, and the actual physical transfer of power is happening in real time. We're about to walk through the step-by-step preparations for a future with the only leader this nation has ever known.
To help us digest this chapter, here is our agenda. First, we'll look at the leadership transition. Second, passing down the law. Third, God's prophecy of rebellion. And fourth, the witnesses. So let's dive right into phase 1, the leadership transition to Joshua. The narrative kicks off in the first 2 verses with a highly significant transition of power. Moses literally goes out, speaks directly to all of Israel, and announces that the era of his leadership is officially over. He starts off with a pretty stark statement about his own reality. Moses tells Israel, "Look, I am 120 years old today, and I am no longer able to lead you." Now, in the simple literal understanding of the text, what we call the Peshat in Hebrew, he uses the exact phrase, "I am no longer able to go out and come in." You see, this doesn't just mean he's physically tired or needs a nap. It's a specific idiom signifying that his role as their active leader in battle and daily civil affairs is completely done. He then explicitly reminds the people of a hard truth. He says, "The Lord has told me you shall not cross the Jordan." This is an absolutely crucial moment of divine boundary setting. Think about it. The great deliverer, the man who brought them out of Egypt, is publicly accepting his limits. He is stepping down and completely submitting to God's decree that his part in this epic journey is over. But here is what makes Moses such a great leader. He doesn't leave them in despair. He immediately shifts the focus completely away from himself. In verses 3 through 5, he looks at the people and reassures them that the Lord God himself is going to cross over ahead of them. God is going to be the one to destroy the nations currently living in the land, paving the way for Israel to take possession of it. Then he officially announces that Joshua will cross over ahead of them as their new physical commander. To really build their confidence, Moses reminds them of their own recent history. He tells them God will do to these new nations exactly what he did to Sihon and Og, the kings of the Amorites. To clarify, Sihon and Og were these massive, formidable giant kings whom the Israelites had just miraculously defeated. By bringing them up right now, Moses is essentially giving them a pep talk, saying, "Hey, look at our past victories. They are the exact blueprint for your future. The very same God who defeated those giants is going to defeat the nations ahead." Moses anchors this whole transition with a repeated, incredibly powerful command in verses 6 through 8. First, he speaks to the entire assembled nation, telling them to be strong and courageous. In Hebrew, this famous phrase is chazak ve'ematz. He tells them, "Chazak ve'ematz, do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." Then, in a brilliant move, Moses calls Joshua forward, right there in front of the entire assembly, making this an undeniable public inauguration. Moses looks at Joshua and repeats the exact same charge. He tells him, "Chazak ve'ematz, be strong and courageous, that he must go with this people into the land, and that the Lord will go before him." This illustrates perfectly that true leadership isn't about replacing God. It's about following him courageously into the total unknown. Moving on to phase 2, passing down the law. With the military and physical leadership securely passed to Joshua, Moses immediately pivots. He needs to make sure the cultural and spiritual laws actually survive his death. This happens in verses 9 through 13. First, Moses literally writes down the law. He then takes this written document and entrusts it to the priests. These are the sons of Levi who carry the Ark of the Covenant, and to all the elders of Israel. Just to clarify, the Ark of the Covenant is the sacred chest housing the stone tablets given at Mount Sinai, so it represents the very core of their covenant with God. But Moses knows human nature. Simply having a written book hidden away in a secret chest isn't going to cut it. The people actually need to know what's in it. So Moses institutes a strict logistical procedure. He commands that at the end of every 7 years, a massive public reading must take place. And the timing is key. This happens during the year for canceling debts, known in Hebrew as the Shemitah year, which is a time when the economic playing field is completely leveled. And it specifically happens during the Feast of Tabernacles, known as Sukkot, a major festival when all Israelites already journey to appear before the Lord.
What's amazing here is who is invited. The text explicitly states in verse 12 that this reading is not just for the scholars, the priests, or the political elite. Moses commands, "Assemble the people, men, women, and children, and the aliens living in your towns." Historically, this specific commandment is known as Hakhel, which simply means assemble. Every single person, regardless of their status, gender, age, or origin, absolutely must gather to listen. This brings us to a major practical life lesson. Why assemble everyone? So they can learn to fear the Lord and follow the law. Verse 13 specifically points out that the children, the ones who do not yet know this law, must hear it and learn. A society relies on radical inclusion in its education to survive. You see, values only endure if they are intentionally and publicly taught to the next generation.
So up to this point, the first half of the chapter is incredibly hopeful, organized, and structured. Moses has carefully, methodically handled the physical leadership and the spiritual education. We see some truly meticulous human preparation. But we have to ask, what happens after Moses is actually gone? Well, we are about to see a really stark contrast between Moses' human preparation and God's divine foresight. The tone of the chapter shifts drastically in verse 14, when God summons Moses and Joshua to present themselves at the tent of meeting, so that God can formally commission Joshua. This brings us to phase 3, God's prophecy of rebellion. Appearing at the entrance to the tent of meeting, which in Hebrew is the Ohel Moed, the central sanctuary of the Israelites as they traveled in the desert, God appears in a visible pillar of cloud. This is a direct, undeniable manifestation of the divine. And right here, God delivers a blunt, absolutely devastating prophecy to Moses about the future of the Israelites. We see this unfold step by step in verses 15 through 18. Going verse by verse here, God lays out a grim and seemingly unavoidable timeline. He tells Moses in verse 16 that once Moses rests with his fathers, meaning once he dies, these people will enter the promised land and eventually prostitute themselves to the foreign gods of the land. In verse 20, God gets very specific about exactly how this will happen. He says that he will bring them into the land flowing with milk and honey. They will eat their fill and they will thrive. But then their prosperity will become their downfall. They will turn to other gods and serve them, completely rejecting the covenant. Notice the deep psychology going on here. It is not hardship that turns them away, but comfort and success. God is saying that when they are completely satisfied and comfortable, they will just forget the God who provided for them in the first place. In response to this future guaranteed betrayal, God issues a severe warning in verses 17 and 18. He says that his anger will burn against them, and he will hide his face from them. In Hebrew, this profound concept is called hester panim, the hiding of the face. Now, keeping things simple, hester panim doesn't mean God ceases to exist or disappears. On a simple pashat level, it means a withdrawal of divine providence and protection. Without that divine shield, God warns that many disasters and difficulties will consume the nation, leaving them subject to the harsh, natural laws of history. The people will even realize it. They'll ask, "Have not these disasters come upon us because our God is not with us?" Yet God says he will certainly keep his face hidden. He will maintain that hester panim because of their profound wickedness in intentionally turning to other gods. And that leads us to phase 4, the fail-safes. Because God declares this future rebellion to be an absolute certainty, the entire rest of the chapter, verses 19 through 30, is dedicated to establishing tools to handle this failure. God and Moses create fail-safes, specific things that will stand as enduring witnesses against the people when they inevitably stray from the path. So God first commands both Moses and Joshua in verse 19 to write down a specific song and teach it to the Israelites. It is really vital to see their united front here. Both the outgoing leader and the incoming leader are tasked with this job together. They are told to make the people sing it. This song, and by the way, the actual lyrics of this song make up the entirety of the very next chapter, chapter 32, is given by God to serve as a direct, undeniable witness for him against the Israelites. Now, you might be wondering, why does God use a song? Well, look at verse 21. God says that when disasters come upon them, this song will testify against them, because it will not be forgotten by their descendants. Think about how human memory actually works for a second. We forget long speeches, we forget complex rules, but we remember lyrics, rhythms, and melodies, right? This song is meticulously designed as an unerasable failsafe. God notes very bluntly, I know what they are disposed to do, even before I bring them into the land. The song will survive in their minds to testify against their rebellion, reminding them of the covenant they broke. Following this command, Moses writes the song down that very day and immediately teaches it to the people. Following a brief reaffirmation of Joshua's commission by God in verse 23, where God himself tells Joshua, Chazak ve'ematz, be strong and courageous, Moses turns and addresses the Levites and the elders. And he wholeheartedly agrees with God's bleak assessment of the situation. In verse 27, Moses bluntly tells them, for I know how rebellious and stiff-necked you are. That phrase stiff-necked in Hebrew is am kashe oref. It's actually a vivid agricultural metaphor, describing an ox that stubbornly refuses to turn its neck to the yoke. Moses continues, saying, look, if you have been rebellious against the Lord while I am still alive and standing right here with you, how much more will you rebel after I die? Moses has absolutely no illusions here. He knows his physical presence has been the primary dam holding back their corrupt tendencies. So, in verses 24 through 26, after Moses finishes writing every single word of the law in a book, he gives a crucial, final command to the Levites. He tells them to take this physical book of the law and place it directly beside the Ark of the Covenant. Notice the strict text here. It is placed beside the Ark, not inside it, as the inside held the stone tablets. By placing the written law right next to the holiest object in all of Israel, it serves as a permanent, physical witness against their coming corruption. So they now have an oral witness in the song and a physical witness in the book. Finally, in the closing verses of the chapter, Moses commands that all the elders and officials assemble before him so he can recite the song to them, calling heaven and earth as witnesses to the fact that they have been thoroughly and completely warned. To quickly recap our journey, Chapter 31 walked us through the transfer of power to Joshua, the public reading of the law known as Hakhel, God's sobering prophecy of future rebellion driven by prosperity, and the creation of the song and the book as eternal witnesses. Looking back at all these steps, we are left with a truly fascinating thought to take away. What does it mean to build meticulous laws, educational systems, and fail-safes for a future you already know will fail? Moses and God didn't give up on Israel despite knowing exactly what their flaws were. Instead, they provided the exact tools that the people would eventually need to find their way back after they hit rock bottom. True leadership, it turns out, involves preparing your people not just for the victories, but equipping them to survive their own inevitable failures. Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.